Here. Can you tell me about the B'nai B'rith Women's Bowling League?
Actually speaking, it is no longer from B'nai B'rith, but we won't give up the name. When it started, we bowled, you had to be a member of B'nai B'rith to bowl. No longer do you have to be a member. We have no women's chapters in Hamilton at all. And so we do have a women's B'nai B'rith women overall, that's worldwide. And a lot of us are still life members of B'nai B'rith. There are a lot of girls in our bowling league that are. And we still keep the name. And everybody refers to us as B'nai B'rith women.
Do you remember, can you talk about the origins of this group?
Of our bowling group? Actually speaking, it was the other chapter, it was Viceroy Women's Chapter that started the 5-pin bowling, and that was at Connaught. You wouldn't remember. John Street at Main and John, there was a bowling alley, and the Golds owned it. Do you remember the Golds? Well, they owned it, and the women started bowling there. My mother bowled in the league, and when I got married, I joined the bowling league. I was in the league 1 year when I became bowling chairman, and I think that's going to be on my grave. All nice thing you can say is, and she was bowling chairman. So that's how it started. Then after, 10 pins became very popular, and we changed to bowl 10 pins. And we bowled at Centre Mall, and we bowled at the Stelco Union's bowling alley on Barton Street East. And now we're at Skyway Lanes, where we have been for, oh God, I think we've been there for 30 or 35 years.
How many members?
Right now, our bowling league is the smallest it's ever been. We have 24 bowlers, that's it. And we can't get, not anymore, she did. Do you know Shelley? No, he's going to say no.
No, I do, of course I do.
Okay. She's a very good friend of mine because she started going on the road with Mark.
Oh, okay.
Mark is not, he's got back trouble, and so she goes on the road with him, writes his orders.
His son, their son,
yeah,
lives with my son in Montreal.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Jason or Jordan? Jeffrey. Yeah, I know her boys.
So
yeah.
You're born in Hamilton.
Born and bred.
And when you grew up, can you talk a little bit about whether what you remember? Was it a nice place to grow up? I mean,
I didn't know anything else. There was one person that lived in our neighborhood. I lived at the Catherine and Barton area, which is North End. And there was one girl who used to say, "You Jew," and tried to beat us up all the time. But all my girlfriends were Catholic, Italian, but they went to Catholic schools, and very few went to public school. I loved public school. I loved school. I wasn't marvelous in school, but I loved it. I went to Cannon Street School, then to Tweedsmuir for 7 and 8, and then I went to Central High.
When you grew up in Hamilton, which I presume might not have been in the early 60s, was there a Jewish school?
Sure. I went to Tomatora and I went to Jewish school. I went to both. As a matter of fact, our teacher at Jewish school was from Montreal. David Kunigis, his name was.
Where was the Jewish school?
At that time, the center was on John Street North, a block below Barton. Did you know that? There's an Italian club there now. Yeah.
Well, where was the Tomatora?
Right there, at the Jewish Community Center.
2 schools?
Yeah.
Who went to which?
Well, I went to both. Who went to which? I don't know. Everybody did what they wanted. I have, I wonder where that is. I have a lovely picture of our Shula group. Oh, golly. That goes back, eh?
Were the schools
They're-
together?
Yeah, well,
Did they exist at the same time?
yeah.
What was the
And-
difference between the two schools?
One taught Hebrew and one taught Yiddish. And then for a while, the Talmud Torah was on Vine Street. Remember our old, where the funerals were? That was the Talmud Torah for a while. It was also part of the center for a while. We had Hashemeretz,
What's it here?
yeah, there. That's where we used to meet, on Vine Street.
In that Zionist group?
Yeah,
How often do you remember meeting?
we met once a month, but I'm not a Zionist. I'm Jewish, but I never, don't say that, I mean, maybe I am. I've never said that I'm a Zionist, but I'm Jewish
So why were you going to Hashomer?
because I loved it. I loved the people, I loved the dancing, I loved the singing, and I met a lot of people. The kids from Toronto used to come in all the time. But I ended up marrying a Hamilton boy, one of the few people.
One of the few people you married?
No, excuse me, Billy.
Just wondering.
No, one of the very few that married
many-
Hamilton.
How many people do you remember were part of this?
Hashemer?
Yeah, like when you got together? 30, 40,
Yeah,
50?
they probably had about 30.
Really?
Uh-huh.
This was after the state was created, or?
God, I don't know. So I have to tell you how old I am.
When like you were in your early 60s.
She did not. My son's 53.
So she could have been wrong.
I am 71, and I'm proud of it. There you go. So I was, I guess, 13 when I was in Hashemer. I got married at 16.
So it was pre-state.
And I was married in 1950. Wasn't 48? Wasn't state 48? Yeah.
The people, synagogue,
We had we had a temple which was on Hunter Street Shul, on Orthodox, not like they are now. I belong to Addis Israel now, but I don't profess to be Orthodox.
What was your maiden name?
Paces. My father was president of CJO when I was a kid, and when I don't know if they were adopted. I know that Rosie Soley, did you know Rosie Soley? Rosie Soley and her brother David both came over at the same time. She was 8 years old. And Mrs. Tadelbaum, who you wouldn't remember, adopted Rosie, and she wanted to adopt David, but he wanted to keep his name. He lived with them. He moved in with Mr. and Mrs. Tadelbaum. They had a store on James Street North, and they took them in, and Mrs. Tadelbaum just loved that Rossi. And she ended up marrying a Hamilton doctor, Dr. Soley. And then I don't know how many, two girls lived with my sister-in-law, Esther Wolf, two young girls. And I meet one of them now very often, Vera Barony. Her husband, I didn't meet Vera when she came over, but I met her husband, Robert, who is now passed away. And a lot of kids lived on Catherine Street, some with Jewish people and some with Hungarians that weren't Jewish. And they lived on Catherine Street, so a lot of them moved to Montreal after.
So there were as many as what, 50 or?
Oh, more.
That came to Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they moved in with Hungarian non-Jewish families, I assume, is because these were Hungarian kids who only knew the language of Hungarian.
Probably, yeah. And I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And they lived like in the neighborhood I lived in, a lot of them, so I saw them often. So I grew, I grew up with them then. And it was a very, I think I had a beautiful childhood. I think I had a lovely childhood. I went from a very loving home with grandparents who lived with us, and then I got married. And so I always had, I think I had a beautiful life.
Your
And
grandparents spoke what language?
Yiddish, and we answered them in English. And that's really funny because they talked to our dog and cat in Yiddish too, and they did what they said. But we always answered them in English. My two grandfathers lived with us at one time. My father's father and my mother's father. And my mother's mother always lived with us.
They all went to the Ferguson.
Yeah, not my father's parents, because they lived in Toronto for a while, and then when my grandfather came to Hamilton, he did come to Ferguson Avenue Shul with us. Yeah. That was an Orthodox shul. The women upstairs and the men downstairs, you know.
So your father was president of CJO then obviously during the war years and immediately after.
Mhm.
Can you talk about any other like major issues? What were the burning issues of the day besides taking in these refugee children?
In the Jewish community? Well, see, I wasn't like, I don't know, because I wasn't active in the I was 13, so I was only active in things that were fun, right? Not anything that was serious, you know, other than this that I thought that I was so lucky that my dad was present and I could go and meet everybody, you know. It was very nice.
Well, how long did you go to the Jewish schools? And what did you study there? What did they teach you there?
To read Hebrew, and in the Jewish school, read Jewish and speak Jewish. I never spoke Hebrew because the Hebrew we learned wasn't conversational Hebrew. It was, you know, so I mean, to this day, I can read Hebrew, but I wouldn't like anyone to test me. As a matter of fact, I even went to, in later years, Gloria Silverman had a Hebrew class, and I went, and I was so good at first. When she got ahead of me, I quit. I'm a quitter. And Gloria says, "Why are you quitting?" I said, "Well, because I'm not going to be the best anymore, so I have to leave."
So even though you learned Yiddish in school, you didn't know it well enough to speak to your grandparents to answer?
We just never did, because they could understand us. And as a matter of fact, when my mother-in-law moved into Shalom Village, and she was very active there, she just loved it. She was there 3 years, and she decided that I should come as a volunteer. So I did. And the ladies there insisted I speak Yiddish to them. And do you understand Yiddish?
A little.
Oh.
Not a lot, but a little.
He's a what?
He's fluent.
Oh, is he really? Oh, well, I spoke Gehargete Yiddish, and they loved it because every other word was English. And then I also, I did an exercise group at Shalom. My mother-in-law decided, you know what the exercise? I had to sit in a chair in front of them, and I had to do exercise with my arms and legs. Well, it was a hoot. So it really wasn't, I guess, an organ, not like they have now, but it was fun.
Here's an interesting question, I think, and I don't know if you ever think about this, but what's the biggest difference, do you think, in the way the Jewish community works today, for example, and when you were like 20 years old, going back a few years? Is there a big difference?
That's very nice, Billy, thank you.
Do you
A few
think that
years.
there's a difference? Is there a difference for younger kids growing up in this Jewish community than?
I think so.
What would come to your mind when you think about this?
I don't know, when my kids were growing up, they were always involved in, my daughter, my oldest daughter was involved in B'nai B'rith, BBYO, and my son belonged to fraternities and only Jewish, you know. I don't know, the kids in Hamilton, I can't say because I don't have any grandchildren living here, So it'd be too hard for me to really say that now. My kids were involved in Jewish organizations, but that was what they grew up with. Like, you know, you didn't have to force them to do anything because that was part of it. And then they went to schools in Westdale. They went to George R. Allen in Dalewood, and then on to Mac, and so they were always with Jewish people. And so I can't really honestly say about now.
When you grew up in Hamilton, and as you were beginning to get married, and some of your friends were getting married, did any of your friends marry non-Jews?
Any of my friends? Nope, I don't think so.
But your friends had children who married non-Jews. And when that started happening, I would say probably in the 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
What was the general sentiment among your peers about your peers' children marrying out of the faith? Was it considered like a really...
We were surprised because we had never ever thought that our children would marry out of the faith. I also have, which I think is very surprising, friends that belong to the temple, and the children grew up in the temple, and now 2, 3 of my friends have children who are ultra-Orthodox from the temple, which is really surprising. And then again, some kids that went to the Hamilton Hebrew Academy married non-Jewish. So it's really, that's interesting, don't you think? But I don't think anybody, like if they were your friend, they're your friend. You know, you're not going to not be with them.
Was it considered like
a shunda?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think at first it was.
And do you think that would be the case today, like for your grandchildren, for instance?
I don't think it would be the case today. I don't think people would think that. I think I might be a little surprised. I think I would.
Did you know most of the people who were in the Jewish community
A lot.
when you were growing up?
Yes, a lot.
Was it small enough so that people pretty much knew people? Or
I think so.
Because some people once said that the temple crowd was a little different.
But you see, I had girlfriends that belonged to the temple, so I used to go to the temple with them. I had friends that belonged to Beth Jacob. I used to go to Beth Jacob with them. I also had a lot of Catholic Italian girlfriends, and I used to go to St. Mary's when they went for, they have to go confession, and I used to sit in the church while they went, and the priest used to say, "Oh, here's a little Jewish girl again." So I had a lot of different friends in different,
Did you ever go to confession?
No.
I didn't think so.
Maybe I should have. Maybe I should have, Billy. But no, I never did.
No.
Uh-uh.
Of course not. Were there lots of places, stores, and things that were owned by Jewish people?
Oh yeah, an awful lot.
Really?
A lot of clothing stores were owned by Jewish people. An awful lot of clothing stores. And we had delicatessens at that time. It was nice. It was really nice. It wasn't hard to be kosher, I think, at those times. If and we were in our house, we were kosher. And so it's never hard to be kosher. We never thought anything of being different. We were, other than this one girl who used to bully us all the time, and if we kept out of her way, we were okay. But other than that, I think we had a nice childhood. Very nice, people. And to this day, I still see a lot of people I went to school with. I have a girl I went right through from, I think, grade 1 to grade 8. And I meet with her once a month. Non-Jewish, a Romanian girl. And I hadn't been in contact with her for a long time, and how I met her again was one of my daughters broke her leg, and I was at St. Joe's in emergency with her, and my doctor, at that time Dr. Irving Levy, walked into the emergency. He was on his way to see a patient and saw me sitting there, and he said, "What are you doing here?" And so he said, "Oh, hey Barb, what are you doing here?" And so I told him. Anyhow, after he left, this lady came up to me and she said, "I thought that was you. Are you Barbara Paces?" I said, "Yeah, but nobody's called me that for a long time." And then, so since then, and there was two other girls that we went to school with, and we got together once every couple of months. And now I get to go out with her once a month. We just meet for lunch, you know.
Are you related to Leslie Paces?
He was my uncle.
And in terms of social life, like, where would the Jewish community congregate for socializing? You know, in like
The kids?
yeah, and also as adults, like during your young adulthood.
You know what? An awful lot of time was spent at the Jewish Community Center with my friends. You know,
On Delaware?
No, well, no, because Delaware wasn't until I had kids. But on John Street. And we used to have dances there and parties there. And then after we used to go to meetings, we used to all go on York Street. It was York Street then, Majestic Restaurant. And we thought that was the biggest thing to go for a Coke and French fries. But we never told our parents we were having French fries in the restaurant. And that was one of the places we used to go a lot after, you know. And then when the fraternities, when I was like 15, 16, the fraternities had dances. They had their closing affair. As a matter of fact, my first date with my husband was at the Wonder Grove in the East End of Hamilton. Have you ever heard of that, Wendy? It was an outside dance hall at, I think it was the corner of Main and what? I don't even know what's there now. Well, I should ask one of the other girls. I don't remember. But that's where a lot of the fraternities had their closing affairs. It was very nice. And then the Brant Inn was another place. Every Yom Kippur dance was held at the Brant Inn.
What's a Yom Kippur dance?
They used to have, after Yom Kippur, after we all went home and ate after fasting all day, we had a dance at the Brant Inn.
The teenagers, you mean?
Well, yeah, I went to the Brant Inn.
Where's
Golly.
the Brant Inn?
Where Joseph Brant Hospital is now.
Oh,
That's where the Are you cold?
okay, go
The
ahead.
reason that you didn't tell your parents about the fries is
Because they
wanted to eat healthy?
No, because not like today. No, because they probably were fried in lard.
I see.
He knew that.
I know he knew that.
So you went to the Brant
Inn.
Inn for a dance after the breakfast every Yom Kippur.
It was for years and years and years. They had it.
Who organized that?
I don't know if it was B'nai B'rith. I think that Beth Jacob did it, if I remember correctly, at one
People
time.
have a headache after fasting all day. Like, who went to? Why?
Do you know what? I often wonder now, because when my kids come and break the fast, I couldn't go out dancing, and they never do either. Everybody wants to. Oh, I would like to go. I got a terrible headache.
Yeah.
I don't know. Honest to God, we had a dance after.
It's unreal.
Oh,
It
they
never
were.
made sense to me. A Yom Kippur dance.
Honest to me, they were fabulous. Wendy, I want to tell you, they were so much fun.
Did you have a live band?
Oh yeah, are you kidding? We had live bands, not the prices they charge today. It was fun.
What kind of music?
Well, not hip hop.
So what was it in those days?
All the beautiful songs from the 50s and 60s. You can't compare the music today, I don't think. I mean, we didn't have to have our eardrums blown to listen to music. It was, all Frank Sinatra kind of songs, Judy Garland. Sophie Tucker was at the Branton many, many times. She entertained at the Branton. You probably don't know her, you're too young. Said to Rabbi Green one day, I said, you know what, Rabbi, it's really funny. When I come to shul now, there's a lot of people there I don't know. And he says, you know what, Barbara? I don't either. There are so many new people in this city. At one time, I think I could tell you almost everybody in this city.
But before, one last question. You talked for a second about, you sat on the CJO with Max Stein. Is that what you said?
Max and your Uncle Morley.
So you said it was a lot of fun?
It was very interesting because Rabbi Baskin and Marjorie, I don't know if I should say that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Will you think it out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. They used to come to the meetings. They were both on the board at that time. And Marjorie used to sit and be knitting. And then Rabbi Baskin would say something, and she'd keep on knitting. She'd say, Bernie, do you think you should have said that? And Max Stein was on this side of me, and Morley was across, and Max hit my leg with his elbow, and Morley said, here we go again.
Well, what
They
do you
were,
mean?
because he said things like, it wasn't anything bad.
Yeah.
But it was so interesting to be on the board with both of them, and it was good. It was good then. I also was on the B'nai B'rith. We had a board from the men's groups. We had 2 women's chapters, 3 women's chapters, and 2 men's lodges here in the city at that time. Now we just have the 2 men's lodges, and they don't have meetings, but they do a lot of philanthropic work, both of them.
And the CJO, when you were on the board, what kind of issues were being discussed in those years?
Well, things about Israel. You know, they were always worried about, is everything going to be okay? Because it was always fighting in Israel. From the time Israel became a state, there was always problems, and that was a lot of the discussion. Then they talked about in Hamilton, that was on Delaware. That was that time. And they talked about problems in the city, and there weren't a lot with Jewish people at that time. Not that I remember.
The money that was raised in the annual campaign, did half of it go to Israel and half of it stay in the community? So was it about 50-50 split?
Or I think it might have been more going to Israel. Maybe 3/4 to Israel and 1/4 here.
Not like it is today. You know what it is today?
No, what is it today?
80% here, 20% to Israel.
Because they sponsor a lot more programs here.
And yet,
Israel
Jewish
still
life
needs
was
it.
so vibrant in those years. It's amazing. It sounds like there was so much going on Jewishly in the community, and yet it didn't require funding, it sounds like. Which is interesting.
Yeah, that is interesting. I never thought of it that way.
Well, it was like all... Well, it is interesting. I mean...
Yeah.
But there wasn't this central fundraising body in those days, or was there? Like there is today.
I don't think
The
it
United
was.
Jewish Welfare
Yeah.
Fund.
Well, we did have that. We used to have a book that came out and told what everybody gave. Your name was in a book. Did you ever see that book? I think I still have one.
Someone gave me
Yeah. And it used to put in, and then people would get mad. I think people gave more money because of that book.
Well, they used to print the names in the Hamilton Jewish News, and a lot of people didn't like it.
Oh, no. Oh, no, they didn't like that at all.